They are ballet companies on the leading edge of creativity, growth, and diversity in dance. New York's Dance Theatre of Harlem and Collage Dance Collective in Memphis, Tennessee. Their artistic directors, Robert Garland and Kevin Thomas, are here together with me, Dacquiri Baptiste, for a conversation on dance. Welcome to a conversation on dance. My name is Dacquiri Baptiste, and I'm the Vice President and COO at the Orpheum Theater Group. It is my pleasure to sit next to two amazing individuals who help shed light on dance all over the world, but also here at home in Memphis, Tennessee. I'd like to introduce you to Robert Garland, the Artistic Director of the Dance Theatre of Harlem, and Kevin Thomas, the Artistic Director of Collage Dance Collective. Why don't we take a quick moment to allow yourselves an opportunity to introduce yourselves to the audience. Why don't we start with Robert?
Okay. Well, my name is Robert Garland. I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Awesome.
I studied there at the Pennsylvania Ballet and also at the Philadelphia Dance Company. And while at the Philadelphia Dance Company, Joe Myers Brown, its founder, always believed in having New York teachers come down. So whenever the original Dance Theatre of Harlem company was off from the performing, they would come to Philadelphia to teach. And that was my first, including Carl Shook, the co-founder of Dance Theatre of Harlem. And so that was my first introduction to Dance Theatre of Harlem. And my second introduction was as an 8-year-old child, actually. Well, that one that's actually before being at Philadelphia. Mr. Mitchell had been commissioned to do a work for something called the National Congress of Catholic Churches in honor of Dr. King. And Marian Anderson was a friend of his who lived in Philadelphia, did the narration, and I was seeing this wonderful thing for the first time in an outdoor theater with women in nun habits all around, and so it was very interesting that way.
What about you, Kevin?
Well, my name is Kevin Thomas. I am the co-founding artistic director of Collage Dance Collective. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. That's where I was born, but I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and that's where I started dancing. And it was when I left Montreal and I had moved to Cleveland to dance with Cleveland San Jose Ballet that I was introduced to Dance Theatre of Harlem. Dance Theatre of Harlem came to Cleveland, and for me, it was a wrap after that. When I saw that company, I was like, okay, I need to join. So I say a few years later, I was in New York dancing with Dance Theatre of Harlem.
And now we're sitting here today with you at the helm of DTH, Dance Theatre of Harlem, and you're here, of course, at the helm of Collage Dance Collective in Memphis. That I'd be interested to know how and if your paths ever crossed on this Dance Theatre of Harlem journey.
It's crossed many times because I joined the company in 1995 until 2005, and my first introduction to Dance Theatre of Harlem, I met Robert right away. I got to join a stage full of dancers of color. That was wow, incredible. And I remember joining the cast of Four Temperaments, and Robert was phlegmatic.
That's right.
I was melancholic, and it was, just so wonderful to share the stage with all these artists, and having, at the helm, of course, Arthur Mitchell. And for me, my background when I started dancing, I didn't have an Arthur Mitchell to look up to, someone who looked like me.
Yeah.
So, many years forward, getting to experience this moment at Dance Theatre of Harlem was incredible for me. And another great memory I had, Robert, is when we were on tour. Touring was fantastic. I have to say, those 10 years of Dance Theatre of Harlem, fantastic days. But I remember our tours used to be so much fun. But one of my aha moments is when we were in, I believe it was Granada, Italy, performing outdoors as the Alhambra Castle. And it was an outdoor performance. I'm sitting down watching rehearsal, and it's Serenade. And I've seen and performed in Serenade many times with Le Grand Ballet, Cleveland Ballet, have seen the ballet, of course, George Balanchine's famous ballet. Everyone loves it. But I've when I saw it on Dance Theatre of Harlem, when I saw all those different hues of color, all those different color on the women in these dresses, these tutus, I was like, wow, you know, we are beautiful. We are so beautiful. We are beautiful, classically trained dancers on this stage. And, you know, those really are my memories of DTH, as seeing how beautiful we are.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
It's just beautiful. It's such a beautiful memory, and it makes me wonder, why was DTH founded in the way that it was founded? You know, it's interesting, as Kevin's point of view is, seeing people that look like himself, which we know is so important for you to be able to aspire for more. So I'd love to know if you could just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you know, our Dance Theatre was founded in 1969 by Arthur Mitchell, who was the first black male principal dancer of a major ballet company, that being New York City Ballet. And that was important because at the time, it was believed that black people could not excel at the classical art forms. That's all of them. Classical music, painting, sculpture, anything from the European artistic tradition was believed we could not excel at. And Arthur Mitchell, through dance, and specifically ballet, so I have to prove them wrong. He went to LaGuardia High School, a public high school in New York City, went to the School of American Ballet at the invitation of George Balanchine. And the School of American Ballet was a feeder for New York City Ballet. So he joined New York City Ballet, had a fantastic career, and decided he was going to go to Brazil to start a company. On his way to the airport, he heard about the assassination of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he said, why am I going to Brazil to start something for people that look like me when I can go back to my hometown and or home community and build something there, which he did. He got back, he spent, according to Cicely Tyson, they sat up all night hatching their plan. One little unknown fact about the early days, in those early days, was that Arthur Mitchell's mother always told him, she was a church woman, and she said, Arthur, you know, after you tithe 10% to the church, always tithe 10% to yourself. So by that time, he had gathered $150,000, which in today's universe would be millions. And he used that money to hatch Dance Theatre of Harlem. So he was not just a great artist, he was also a shrewd businessman and knew how to pay attention to things that typically you weren't trained to pay attention to. So of course the connection is this location being Memphis, being, you know, and for Dr. King and that importance of and significance of what occurred here. I've watched Kevin's photographs. Some of you guys have done some lovely pictures at the Lorraine Motel, which has been wonderful to see. You know, all honoring that specific moment for our world as Americans, but also for Dance Theatre of Harlem specifically.
That leads me to ask Kevin to share Collage's journey and why Memphis?
Why Memphis? Well, Dance Theatre of Harlem is in Harlem. That has a majority makeup of people of color, right? So we wanted to move to a city that was similar, and we had heard about Memphis, and it was 65% minority population, and we're like, this, I think this should work. So we came here in 2007, and we did 2 years due diligence to make sure that what we wanted to do was needed. And we realized, yes, it is needed. And in 2009, we opened a school in the basement of a church.
Always. That's right.
With one child, and that's how we started. And now we teach over 1,000 kids a week. So why Memphis? We saw that there was a need. And I know just from my own personal, you know, background, again, as I talked about representation and what ballet has done for me, you know, the places I've been, the schools I was able to get into. Ballet is a gateway, you know, to education. Mr. Mitchell would always say that,
That's right,
you know.
that's right.
And all the lessons, too, that Mr. Mitchell would teach us, I really started learning there at Dance Theatre of Harlem. Things like you are bigger than yourself. You represent more than yourself.
Right.
He would say that to us all the time. I mean, I had never heard that until I came to Dance Theatre of Harlem.
Yes, you're representing something larger than yourself.
Much larger than yourselves, and that means so much. And that's, again, our whole mission too at Collage Dance, is that you represent more than yourself. You know, you're larger than yourself. I say that to my students, say that to the dancers when we're on tour, and it's, you know, it's important that we realize that.
Yeah, you know, Mr. Mitchell, over time, he was so busy with us as dancers. Sometimes he did not find enough time to tell us the genesis of a lot of the pithy sayings that he gave us over the years. And you're representing something larger than yourself was one of them. And right before he was to go into emeritus phase at Dance Theatre of Harlem, he explained to me how that happened, and how it happened, or how the phrase came to be, was that he actually, and this is where I think sometimes historically we don't realize, that he was dancing with New York City Ballet in the middle of the civil rights movement. So there were lots of people that said, Arthur, you know, why are you still dancing there? You know, you should come out here with us, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he was torn for a very long time. And it was Harry Belafonte that told him, no, Arthur, you should stay there because you're representing something larger than yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's how that phrase came to be. Never forgot it. You know, and then the other thing he never forgot was Ruby Bridges. You know, he was at New York City Ballet as the only black person, and he was watching this young lady who was maybe 6 or 7 or 8 integrate a school in the South, and the things that were said to her. And he said after he saw that, he said, I never want us to be ever by ourselves again like that. He didn't believe it.
Is there anything, I mean, I'm sure you share the things that you've learned from Mr. Mitchell, but is there anything you want to share that, you know, that you also have created for your own that you think is helpful to this next generation of dancers? Because they're certainly living in, unfortunately, similar times. There's lots of similarities, but there's also lots of growth, technology. I feel like there's a lot more distractions.
Yes.
So how do you navigate that, not just with the school, but also with the dancers in the company?
That's a good question, because think about what was our life like without our cell phones. But now everyone has a cell phone, so it's the information age. You know, all the, you know, your students, your professional dancers, they have all this information. It's acknowledging that they do have the information, right? And you're dealing with a different generation, basically. And, you know, still, you know, being in front of the room, acknowledging that this does exist, and you using it yourself too. So, I mean, you know, it's not going to go away.
No.
It's here, so we have to live with it and deal with it, but know that, you know, we're dealing with a different generation.
And
but,
adapting.
but, you know, but also using it to your benefit. I mean, you know, yes, we're talking about Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, kids, Google everything, you know. I'm not going to sit there and tell you the whole story. You can Google it, you know.
Yeah, you know, in the early days of Dance Theatre of Harlem, there was due to segregation actually, there was a very robust infrastructure of media in the black community. So there were many, many black newspapers and black radio stations, and that was sort of how the communication happened in the early success of Dance Theatre of Harlem with our community, not with which it wasn't a traditional ballet community. We were making an audience as we were created. And that has slowly gone away. And so one of the things that I'm here this week to do, which is kind of filling in the gap for that, is to really go back into the community, do things like this. But the beauty of this is that I have someone that I know extremely well in this space, as opposed to going in cold. But while we're here, we're going to make a visit to some churches, work with, you know, the marathoners, and just kind of get connected to the community in a way that kind of gives people a level of comfortability with the art form. You know, sometimes people still see ballet as something that's over there, you know, and this gives us an opportunity to, again, press the issue of this is for everyone. Kevin's work is for everyone. Dance Theatre of Harlem work is for everyone. And so So that's kind of how I kind of look at it now. Although, and I think the information age side of it is good. You know, our dancers volunteer to do a large part of our social media that represents the organization. Wonderful. And they do a great job, you know, and because they're the ones that know how. And so hopefully we'll have a marketing director, or you'll have a marketing director, either of you, from that experience.
Yeah.
So.
I think there was a few things that were shared that I just want to circle back to. One of them being, you shared about the moment during the 50s and 60s where there were lots of black papers in lots of ways, and you were creating the audience. I wonder, though I can say I experience it, we're doing the same thing now coming out of COVID. We're recreating our audiences to come back and experience live theater. So they get off their phones, they get off the television all the time. There's nothing like sitting in an audience next to somebody you don't know to experience something together. It's just, to me, that's a beautiful part of the art in general with live theater. And my passion, of course, is dance. And so I just, I understand, I completely understand, but often the words can be trying to bring in an audience that doesn't know what they don't know. Some people may not even know that they're dance lovers because of the words you said, which is like, oh, ballet, it can be scary.
It's polarizing,
it
that
is,
word.
it is, and I don't like that it's polarizing, and we need to figure out how to make it more comfortable for people. And so, Robert, you shared some of the ways that we're working all together in this community to make it more comfortable.
That's right.
Collage is here doing that all the time.
All the time.
We call it reframing the narrative, right? We
Exactly.
want to tell stories that people understand or they connect with, telling the story about Dr. Martin Luther King, you know, talking about that, or their eyes were watching God. That's one way to connect someone. And once they see that, oh my God, this is really quite astounding. As I've told a lot of my board members that I have, you know, parents come up to me, especially fathers, come up to me crying, saying that I didn't know that I would be moved this much by this, you know. So that's a testament to, again, proof that dance is for everyone once that story touches you or that story brings you in.
Absolutely. My first experience with Dance Theatre of Harlem, after I understood what I was watching, because I had the 8-year-old experience, but then after I started training, I understood what I was watching. They were doing performances. I was a teenager in Philadelphia, and they were performing a ballet called Forces of Rhythm. And Forces of Rhythm combined like bits of Tchaikovsky, and I was studying classical music as well at the time. Bits of Tchaikovsky, and then popular Motown songs, and an Aretha Franklin song by Louis Johnson. And it was kind of his kind of take on where we sat as a community post-civil rights. It was a beautiful piece in that sense. And it met me there. It met me there. Curtain went down, curtain goes back up, and there's this woman. Her name was Yvonne Hall, actually. And she had these beautiful legs with these beautiful shoes on that she could stand on her toes, and this purple pancake-looking thing, which I ended up finding out was a tutu. You know, when she was dancing with a gentleman by the name of Ronald Perry. And they were doing a pas de deux. You know, so for me, at that time, it took me from this wonderful Motown Aretha Franklin thing over to this really classical thing. And to this day, that's how I do my programming, honestly.
That's programming is key.
Yeah, that's what I
Programming
do
is key.
because I really believe that we have to create more Kevins and more me's and more Dacquiris.
Absolutely.
You know, particularly post-pandemic.
Absolutely.
You know, one of the things that people were asking during the time we were in the pandemic, what do you think we're going to get out of it? And I said, I'm hoping we're going to get out of it the local dance artists again. When I was at Pennsylvania Ballet, most of the dancers in that ballet company and at Philadelphia Dance Company, all were from Philadelphia. Every single one. Trained, were phenomenal dancers, you know. And I believe that we are about to return to that space. There's a beautiful Korean dancer in she's a soloist maybe by now at San Francisco Ballet, who and she holds great pride in this, was born and raised up through the San Francisco Ballet School. Her mom had a nail salon around the corner. You know, like that means something, I think, to people. So
That, I mean, I can speak personally about it, but at Collage, and I know DTH, but again, is doing that. You're creating these beings that are falling in love with this art form that however long ago they didn't know anything about, and now look at how this is thriving, beautiful facility. And you moved to Memphis, and you said you learned some things that informed your decision to come here. Can you share a few of those things that you may have learned on that journey?
Well, I've learned it's things really grow by word of mouth too. So when we started with one child, we didn't have that much advertisement. So I had one child, and it was through the training that one child told another parent, and it just started, growing that way. So what I've learned that is community is important. Creating a community. You talked about how we introduce these young kids to something they didn't know about, but what they also have now are lifelong friends.
Yes.
We have a few sets of kids that are in university programs, training programs, and they're in contact with each other every day.
It's so special.
And it is special to know that you've created a community that did not exist before. There's a love of an art form that I love. People ask me, why do you love ballet so much? Because it did so much for me. It was my way to communicate. It was the best way that I could communicate.
Of course.
And it led me to, doing great things. And I just know within my heart that if I can give that same gift to someone else, and we've been able to give it to many kids. It makes me so proud to see, our kids going off to different schools to study, Houston Ballet, Boston Ballet, SAB, and they're coming from Memphis, they're homegrown. So, again, what have I learned? Yes, it's the same rules that you learn in ballet. It's hard work, it's passion, it's repetition.
Yes.
All these things, you keep pushing yourself. And
Absolutely. I was talking to Dacquiri about theater goers and the conversation we were having, and there are people that come to see different things, and one of those things is Broadway, and we were chatting, and at one point, I kind of realized that most of the people that are now Broadway people or even straight theater people started somewhere. And a lot of times it was in dance.
It was in dance,
like Dacquiri Baptiste.
That's right. Some of the best dancers rule the world.
That's right. There you go. There you go.
We're seeing it every day in our form. Whenever I talk to kids or high school kids, and they're doing dance a little bit, but I really like math instead. And I said, be a CFO for a dance company.
Yes.
What better people? Be a managing director. Be a finance person. Be something like that, because I don't think your schools exist because you want to make a gazillion dancers.
No.
Your schools exist because you want to create art lovers.
That's right.
If you have an art lover, you're building the next generation of these amazing people.
That's right.
I want to shift just one more moment and talk about sort of more of this, the cross pollination of the two of you and the companies. And if I remember correctly, was it February of 22? Dougala, Dance Theatre of Harlem and Collage Dance Collective came together and collaborated and did Dougala here at the Cannon Center.
Yes.
I would love to just know a little bit about how that happened, and just what that was like to do that again, share that moment.
Well, that was prior to my time as artistic director.
Right.
But Kevin can speak to that. But I did perform the ballet many
Of course.
times.
Yes.
It's the
But
pride and
Kevin's-
joy.
It's a pride and
It's
joy.
the pride and joy of Dance Theatre of
Absolutely.
Harlem, for sure.
But Kevin.
Well, it first began with, Virginia Johnson. She had phoned me saying that they wanted to bring back Dougala. And that was in New York first. And that's how it first began. So they brought back Dougala and they needed to supplement. So they used some of my dancers. And for me, Dougala is magical. When I told you that I saw Dance Theatre of Harlem in Cleveland, the ballet that I saw was Dougala. When I saw that ballet, I was like, I'm going to dance this ballet. And, the other beautiful thing about Dougala is that for me, another sign of representation that the choreographer, Joffrey Holder, is Trinidadian. So again, that's another connection for me. But anyway, so of course, I love this ballet. So when Virginia asked us to do this, I was like, of course, and I know the ballet. We danced it. That was our Revelations. we did it. We would do Four Temperaments.
Yes.
We would do Tchaikovsky and everything. Come out and do Douglas,
That's it.
right?
That's right.
That was
That's
the last
right.
thing we did. So it was great for me to share again this history with my dancers. And Marcellus, our executive director, Marcellus Harper, he had this great idea that, let's bring Douglas to Memphis. And that's really how that started. We're like, let's do it in Memphis. So we called Virginia this time. And we reversed it and said, we would love to do it in Memphis and really have it look like the two companies are kind of getting married because there's a wedding ceremony.
Yes.
There's the groom and the bride. And so, one night it would be the bride from Collage and the groom from Dance Theatre of Harlem, and then we would reverse it the next night, So it was a wonderful collaboration. Again, for me, it's always wonderful for me to teach something I know really well.
Of course.
Yes.
It's ingrained
It's
in you.
ingrained in me. I have all this knowledge, and we got rehearsed by Joffrey Holder.
Exactly.
We got rehearsed by Arthur Mitchell.
Exactly.
So it was a wonderful experience to bring this.
I appreciate you sharing that moment. I think the importance of that, and just again, this whole conversation is this beautiful art form transcends so many different spaces, but also to know we're sitting in a room with two amazing institutions, two amazing companies of color that are not in competition with one another.
No.
They are not here to, have a difference, but more so many likenesses that help elevate everything
That's right.
in the
That's
art,
right.
and I think that's just beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we're coming to a close. This conversation could go on forever. I have so many other things I want to ask, so many other things that we know we can share, but I appreciate your time today, and thank you for allowing me to sit between you two and just guide, because you have all the perfect words to say, to share.
Thank
So
you,
thank
Dad.
you.
Thank you, Dacquiri.
I
It's been a
appreciate
joy.
that.